Hello, boys and girls and babes. Welcome back to the Jenaya Talks Caps podcast. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. We've got a lot to cover today with what's been a rather chaotic start to this Capitals season. Lots of ups and downs so far. But they would not be known as the cardiac Caps if they were known for doing things the easy way, and it's a term of endearment from us Caps fans because they play exciting hockey, and although they give us plenty of moments where we want to bash our heads right through our TV screens, they also give us plenty more moments where we can cheer like crazy because they're just out there kicking ass, scoring goals, staging comebacks, winning big games. So it's an 82-game season, and you win some and you lose some. And this week, that is exactly what's happened. We've won some and we've lost some. So let's start with the game against the Stars in Dallas. A lot of us probably didn't have particularly high hopes going into this game, as the Caps had not won in regulation time in Dallas since October 17th, 1995. I was 4 years old and just learning how to skate when that happened, so that's a long time ago. I'm a pretty good skater now. The Stars had gone 13-0-4 against the Caps in Dallas since then. It's just one of those things. Every team seems to have that opponent who, for whatever reason, they just cannot seem to beat. The Stars are to the Caps what the Caps are to the Bruins. But on this night in Dallas, the Caps got off to a great start and never really wavered, going up 3-0 on goals by Tom Wilson, John Carlson, and Evgeny Kuznetsov. Kuznetsov has a couple of goals and 5 points already at this point. That was through the first 4 games of his season. So he's off to a good start after sitting out the first 3 games of the Capitals season for his league-imposed suspension. Of course, he's added on even more to that with the game in Toronto the other night, but we'll talk about that as we get further along in the podcast here. The Stars, they got 1 goal back with 13 minutes left in the third period, but it did not matter as the Caps had it locked down and basically cruised to the victory. Alex Ovechkin also scored for the Caps, but that happens in basically every game that the Caps play, so I almost don't even need to mention it. Now, this game started out very much the same as the previous 3, with the Caps playing a good first 40 minutes and taking a lead into the third period as a result. And honestly, if not for Stars goaltender Anton Khudobin, this game was probably 8-0 after 2 periods, with the quality of the chances that the Capitals were generating. Khudobin was fantastic in this game. The Caps were dominant. The difference from the previous 3 games, though, was that in this game, the Caps were able to finish it with some strong play in the third period as well. Unlike in the previous 3 games, where they also headed into the third period with the lead, the Caps did not give up the next goal to make a game of it again. Instead, in this game, the Caps got that all-important next goal with Kuznetsov, like I said, making it 3-0 early in the third period, and the Caps were able to step on the Stars' throats and fly out of Dallas with a 4-1 win. It was quite a different third period than what we had seen in the previous 3 games, as the Caps only allowed 8 third-period shots to the Stars, and it never really felt as if the Stars were truly threatening to make a comeback at any point, so that's a very good sign. The penalty kill was also excellent in this game, killing off all 6 of the Stars' power plays, while the Caps went 2 for 5 on their own power play. And these are really some of the themes early on in the season so far, is that there are a lot of areas so far where the Caps are much better than they were last season. Special teams have been very good for the Caps so far this season. And, we always expect, rightfully so with all of the talent that they can put on the ice, we always expect for the Caps to be either at or at least near the top of the league in power play efficiency. The power play got off to a bit of a, let's say, discombobulated start this season, but to be fair, they were missing power play mainstay Evgeny Kuznetsov for the first 3 games of the season, so that's bound to throw some things out of whack. But since Kuznetsov has entered the lineup for the Caps, and since the Caps have started getting the puck through to Alex Ovechkin again and utilizing him and the threat of his shot properly, which, of course, I touched on that a lot in the previous episode. Since that's happened, the power play seems to be pretty much fixed. It went 2 for 4, or 50%, against the Predators in Nashville, 2 for 5, like I mentioned, or 40% against the Stars in Dallas. 0 for 2 officially against Colorado, although the first of those 2 power plays was only a minute long, and Alex Ovechkin scored right at the tail end of the second one, so even though it wasn't officially scored as a power play goal, it basically was a power play goal. And then they went 1 for 5 officially against Toronto, but again, the 1 for 5 doesn't really tell the whole story there, as John Carlson scored what was the only official power play goal, but Jakub Vrana also blasted one that appeared to go in. The goal light actually came on behind the net, but it could later be seen on the video that it went post and out. And the Caps also appeared to have another power play goal scored right after John Carlson had netted his. I think it was Tom Wilson who poked the loose puck into the net, but the refs, blind as they are, had already blown an early whistle, stating that they'd lost sight of what was clearly, upon replay, a very loose puck. So it was ruled a no goal. So officially, 1 for 5, but it really quite easily could have been 3 for 5, and that's more what I'm getting at anyway, is not only the efficiency of the power play percentage-wise as far as goals scored, but also in the increased number of high-quality chances that the power play has been generating ever since the Caps got Evgeny Kuznetsov back from suspension. It's pretty clear to me, using my 100% effective eyeball test, that the return of Kuzi has allowed the Caps to regain that chemistry that we've become so accustomed to, and which has made their power play so effective throughout the majority of the Alex Ovechkin era. Of course, having Alex Ovechkin's one-timer at your disposal doesn't hurt either. So the power play is back to being pretty much right where we expect it to be, which is generating a lot of high-quality chances, as well as scoring a lot of goals. But what's been going on with the penalty kill? Well, that is not so much what we expected. You all remember our penalty kill for the majority of last season, right? I do. I had nightmares about it. It was terrible. It was utter horse shit. It was at the level where I would rather take my own eyeballs out with a spoon rather than watch our team kill a penalty. It, of course, got a lot better when the Caps eventually traded for Carl Hagelin and Nick Jensen, both of whom, Hagelin in particular, are great penalty killers. But basically, it was horse shit for much of the season. It finished 24th in the league overall at a measly 78.9%. Fast forward to this season, and folks, we are kicking ass on the penalty kill. The penalty kill is currently clicking at 84.6%, good for 8th in the league. And while I suspect a lot of that is guys like Hagelin and Jensen simply having more time to mesh with the penalty kill unit after joining the team late in the season last season, I suspect a lot of it is also due to a few personnel changes that the Caps made over the summer, including shipping Matt Niskanen to the Flyers in exchange for Radko Gudas. It's no secret that Niskanen's play, particularly defensively, had sort of fallen off of a cliff over the last couple of seasons. And ridding ourselves of him, as much as I hate to say it because I do like the guy a lot, but ridding ourselves of him while simultaneously adding a player like Gudas, who is very strong on the penalty kill, has improved our penalty kill and our overall defensive game a lot. And I'll get to the rest of the defensive game in just a moment. But first, I just want to point out this stat as far as the strength of our special teams is concerned. So for those who don't know, what teams usually do to judge the overall strength of their special teams is you take the power play percentage and you take the penalty kill percentage and you add them together to get your overall efficiency. Anything over 100, as far as this is concerned, is considered a good number. Anything between 105 to 110 is considered excellent. The Caps last season, for reference, were at a 99.7 overall. So that's below 100. That would not be considered very good. This season, they're at a 106.5. That is a huge difference season over season as far as special teams are concerned. And for a team that is a very strong 5-on-5 team, that is only going to serve them very well in terms of the standings and eventually in terms of their playoff chances if they keep it up. So that's very encouraging to start the season. We've also seen a dramatic improvement from the Caps this season in terms of shot suppression. Last season, they were middle of the pack, 15th in the league to be exact in terms of shot suppression, allowing an average of 31.5 shots against per game. Now, are you ready for this season's numbers? You should be if you're a Caps fan, because the numbers for this season are pretty magical. The Caps are currently first in the entire NHL. First place in the entire NHL in terms of shot suppression, allowing an average of just 27.8 shots against per game. That is an insane turnaround from last season. Again, it's early yet. There's still a lot of hockey left to be played, but I think this is what we can expect as far as the new norm for the Caps. And again, a lot of the improvement, I suspect, is due to the personnel changes that Caps general manager Brian McClellan made in the offseason. The players who he added, Radko Gudas, Richard Panik, Garnet Hathaway, Brendan Lepsick, they're all very good players in terms of the underlying metrics and advanced stats, shot suppression, puck possession, etc. Puck possession, of course, is linked to shot suppression, as it's hard for the opposition to be racking up shots if your team always has the puck. And at the same time, some of the players who McClellan let go from last season's lineup, Matt Niskanen, Brooks Orpik, etc., were some of the worst on the team in terms of those underlying metrics and advanced stats. So when you let go the players who suck at these things and you add players who are very, very good at these things, it's really no surprise that we're seeing such a drastic improvement in these categories from last season to this season. Shot suppression overall is obviously also linked to the dramatic improvement in the penalty kill, as when the PK is not allowing nearly as many shots against, the overall shots against per game will drop. But we've also, in addition to that improvement on the penalty kill, we've also seen a huge improvement specifically in shot suppression at 5-on-5. Radko Gudas, in particular, is a shot suppression beast, while Matt Niskanen and Brooks Orpik left a lot to be desired in that department. Another area where we're seeing a massive improvement from last season to this season is in the face-off circle. I've touched on it already in previous episodes, but it really has been quite an incredible turnaround, largely using the same four centers whom we utilized last season, and so I wanted to mention it again because it really is a testament to those players, Nicholas Backstrom, Evgeny Kuznetsov, Lars Eller, and Nick Dowd, and they deserve a lot of credit for the work that they've obviously put in, because it is definitely making a difference for the Caps in the face-off circle. Like I said, I mentioned it already in a previous episode, but the Caps were dead last out of 31 teams in the NHL last season in terms of face-off win percentage at a measly 45.7%. That just makes you want to cry, doesn't it? This season, again, same four centers, they are currently 8th in the league at 52.5%. Again, that is a crazy turnaround, and kudos to the Caps centers for making that a priority in the offseason and putting in the work. Improvement in the face-off circle, of course, also leads to more puck possession, which in turn leads to better shot suppression. So it's all linked together, and sometimes improving upon just one thing, such as face-offs, can lead to drastic improvement in a multitude of categories. And that's what we're seeing here this season with the Caps. Every puck possession metric for the Caps is much better this season than it was last season. They've been nothing short of dominant so far this season at 5-on-5. And the increase in puck possession is also helping the Caps to have a much better shot differential this season. Yes, the Caps have been out-shooting everyone this season, you may have noticed. They're averaging 30.4 shots for per game, and like I mentioned, only giving up 27.8 shots against per game. That's great, honestly. Like, that's a really good shot differential. By contrast, last season, the Caps allowed more shots against than what they took themselves. They took the same amount of shots, actually 30.4 per game, as they're taking this season. It's kind of weird, it's the exact same number. But they allowed a lot more shots against last season, like I said, with 31.5 shots against per game. So the difference, obviously, is in the shot suppression. The Caps, everyone knows, have always been a top-notch team offensively, but you always want to have a positive shot differential, and the defensive play was leaving a lot to be desired last season, and that seems to be, so far anyways, fixed for the most part. The Caps' goaltending obviously has been letting them down a little bit so far this season, but I do fully expect that to change. And so the most important thing moving forward is that they are allowing far fewer shots against than they did last season. So I told you, right, that's sort of becoming one of the themes so far for this season, is that the Caps are playing better, executing better, and improving upon what they did last season in a number of areas. And it's translating to the stat sheet, and I believe will eventually translate to the win column as well. Although the Caps, of course, did just fine in the win column last season, but they can do even better. The Caps played a couple more games in the week, losing 6-3 at home to the Colorado Avalanche, who won for the 5th time in their first 5 games. I'd like to say that the Caps were bad in this game, but they really weren't. They outshot the Avs 32-25. They out-hit the Avs 29-11, and they were a whopping 58% in the face-off circle. So those are all very good numbers. And no, the box score in this game was mostly the result of a horrific night for Caps goaltender Braden Holtby, followed by a pretty costly mistake behind the net by rookie goaltender Ilya Samsonov, who relieved him. But we'll get there. So first, Halloween came early for Braden Holtby as he allowed 3 goals on the first 3 shots that the Avs took in the game. As a result, it was 3-0 for the Avs less than 8 minutes into the game, and Braden Holtby got the hook. He was pulled. So enter Ilya Samsonov, who was sporting the league's best goals against average and save percentage entering this game. Samsonov gave up a goal about a minute and a half later after coming into the game on an Avs power play. It wasn't really his fault, but welcome to the game, and it's 4-0 for the Avs. The Caps did not play their game at all in that first period. They would tell you that. They did tell you that when interviewed afterwards. They know they didn't play their game in the first period. It's not that they played poorly, they just weren't playing Caps hockey, and so they decided to get back to Caps hockey heading into the second period. And get back to it, they certainly did. The Caps ratcheted up the physicality in the second period. It started with Alex Ovechkin being the first to kill an Avalanche player with a completely legal hit. R.I.P. Samuel Girard. It was nice knowing you. Tom Wilson followed suit shortly after, laying the smackdown on another Avalanche player, as did the rest of the Caps, really. They all kind of, followed the leader obviously being Alex Ovechkin. And then, all of a sudden, every Cap was hitting anything and everything wearing an Avalanche jersey. And as a result, the game really started to turn around quite quickly, really, in favor of the Caps. The Caps outscored the Avs 2-0 in the second period to make it a 4-2 game. First with Alex Ovechkin forcing a turnover inside of the Avs zone and getting the puck to Lars Eller, who made a nice move with the puck and roofed it past our old friend, Philip Grubauer. Lots of the old Gru chants throughout this game as well. Love to see that. The Caps faithful still cheering on Grubauer. Obviously, he was great for us when he was here, and miss him a lot. He's a really good guy. And then TJ Oshie scored on a very pretty passing play from Orlov and Kuznetsov. So, heading into the third, the Caps really had all of the momentum. And after the Caps came out flying again in the third period, and they almost scored early in the third, then the Avs came down the other way, and that's when the very unfortunate gaffe by Ilya Samsonov happened. Samsonov, kind of a rookie mistake. He tried to play the puck behind his own net, but he lost the puck, and the Avs had an empty net to tap the puck into before Samsonov could get back into his net and into position. So it's 5-2 for the Avs. Before that play happened, though, I was actually sure that the Caps were going to tie it. That's just the way that the game was headed. Like I said, the Caps had all of the momentum, with the Avs broadcasters actually stating that the Avs were now, and I quote, running scared after that second period onslaught by the Caps. But alas, it was not meant to be. It was just not our night. Nothing was going our way. The Caps still gave it the good old college try with Alex Ovechkin scoring on a bomb from the point with just over 2 minutes left in the game to make it 5-3. And then John Carlson actually made it 5-4 just a few seconds later on a rooftop snipe past Grubauer, which had Capital One Arena rocking like crazy. The Caps would still have had over 2 minutes left to get the tying goal, but like I told you, it was not our night. The Avs bench challenged the goal for offside, and they won the challenge. The refs called the goal back, and the score went back to being 5-3. The Capital One Arena faithful was predictably less than pleased. The Avs then added an empty net goal, and that was all she wrote. There's a lot to unpack from that game. The goaltending on the part of the Caps was, let's say, politely not great. Holtby, in particular, obviously left a lot to be desired in the 8 minutes that he played and the 3 shots that he faced. It was a really tough night for the Holtbeast. But listen, I'm going to get up on my soapbox a little bit here. Holtby is going to be just fine. He's not having the best season ever so far. Far from it, in fact. He would tell you that. Again, he has told us that. He's owned up to it. There's a lot of talk about whether or not his contract status and the uncertainty surrounding it might be affecting him negatively, and that's definitely a possibility. But what I will say, and what I know for sure, is that Holtby is going to bounce back. He's going to be fine, and he's going to be the goalie who helped us to win this franchise's first Stanley Cup. He is very mentally tough. He has always shown that consistently. He's never given us any reason to doubt that. He always bounces back. And listen, everyone has a rough patch every once in a while. These guys are human. It happens to everyone. Happens to you. Happens to me. Happens to the best players in the world. Happens to everyone in every profession. But it's how you bounce back that really counts for something. And Holtby has always been able to do that with a level of class and a level of grace that would be hard to emulate. You know he's going to be a great teammate while he sits on the bench and practices hard and gets his game back together. And when he does get his chance to play again, he is going to seize it just like he did when he got his chance in Game 3 against Columbus in 2018. We all remember how that turned out. But what I do want to point out as well is that while Holtby's game has been far from perfect, I think, he and everyone else would admit that, so has the defense being played in front of him. That has been far less than perfect, if you can even call it defense. I use that term very, very loosely. The difference in the quality of defense that is being played in front of Braden Holtby versus the quality of defense that is being played in front of Ilya Samsonov is staggering. And it's something that we've seen before, first with Grubauer, then with Phoenix Copley, and now with Samsonov. It's almost as if this team trusts Holtby too much. They play just a loose, wild, risky game in front of him because they trust him, God bless their souls, to make every save. They're expecting him and relying on him to make 15 10-bell saves in every game, which is absolutely not what they do when they're playing in front of Samsonov. Or in front of anyone else, for that matter. They play a very safe game in front of Samsonov, just as they did last season in front of Copley, and just as they did the season before in front of Grubauer. So what I would like to see before we burn our Stanley Cup winning goaltender at the stake is for the team to play at least, let's say, a similar quality of defense in front of Holtby as to what they do in front of Samsonov, and then maybe we'll have a better comparison. Yes, Holtby's game right now needs to improve, but so does the play of his teammates in front of him. The other thing that was really evident in the game against Colorado, and I've said it many times before, is just how much the Caps really do need to play a heavy brand of hockey in order to be as successful as they can be. The tide totally turned in that game in the second period when the Caps started hitting everything that moves. That's how they need to play. They're a big, heavy, mean, physical team, and they need to play a big, heavy, mean, physical game. That's their recipe for success. We saw it in the 2018 postseason. For whatever reason, though, we haven't consistently seen this from the Caps ever since Todd Reirden took over as head coach. It never seemed to be a problem when Barry Trotz was in town, and so maybe it's just me, but from what I've seen with my own eyeballs, Todd Reirden doesn't seem to get the same buy-in from his players that Barry Trotz was always able to get. Seems to be a harder sell somewhat for Reirden. And as the head coach, it's your job to not only A, tell your players how you want them to play, but also B, to get them to want to play that way for you every single night. The Caps are still very capable of it, because we're certainly seeing it in spurts this season, as well as last season. But for whatever reason, Reardon can't seem to get them to play that heavy game consistently. They're kind of, they do it for one game and then it goes away again for another 3 games. And then it's back for another game and then it goes away again for another 2 games. He's going to have to figure out a way to get his message across if he wants this team to be as successful as the one in 2018. So, then we have the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, Canada's team, who no one in Canada outside of Toronto actually likes. What a stupid nickname, brought to you by TSN. Anyways, this was a fun game to watch. Ilya Samsonov got the start in net for the Caps. Michael Hutchinson got the nod for the Leafs. The Caps were down 2-0 almost before you could even blink, but it would not last. Jakub Vrana blasted a one-timer past Hutchinson off of a beautiful feed from John Carlson, and that's going to be a theme here. Beautiful plays by future Norris Trophy winner John Carlson. The Vrana goal came with about a minute left in the first period, and that was how the period ended at 2-1 for the Maple Leafs. But then we go to the second period, and in a span of just 1 minute and 18 seconds, the Leafs' world was destroyed. Evgeny Kuznetsov scored a beauty on another sweet feed from John Carlson. Kuzi has points in all 5 games he's played now this season for the Caps. That's how you redeem yourself after suspension, and it's a tie game. 11 seconds later, a furious forecheck by the Caps resulted in TJ Oshie turning the puck over, and he fed Nicklas Backstrom in the slot, and we know Nicky is not going to make any mistake from there. He buries it to make it 3-2 for the Caps. The Leafs, now reeling, would take back-to-back penalties, putting the Caps on a 5-on-3 power play, which is probably the last thing that you ever want to do. We all know how that story ends, right? Right. They're not going to miss on that opportunity. Nick Backstrom feeds Alex Ovechkin. And Ovi did something really smart here just prior to the pass. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but he had skated all the way out of the zone, circled quickly, and then he comes ripping back into the zone at full speed, skating full speed into Backstrom's pass. So obviously all of the Leafs players, including goaltender Michael Hutchinson, think Ovi coming in at that speed is going to rip a huge slap shot, right? Wrong. Hutchinson comes way out of his net to challenge the Ovi shot, and Ovi instead fakes the slapper and sends a sweet feed over to John Carlson, who one-times it past a helpless Hutchinson and into the back of the net. It was a gorgeous play. And that was pretty much the game at 4-2 for the Caps. The Leafs were pretty much neutered after that. They would add a goal late to make it somewhat interesting, but it was never really close. The Caps were pretty much in full control from the end of the first period on. And the Caps held a third period lead. Hallelujah! And listen, a big part of the Leafs being neutered in this game was not only the offensive firepower that the Caps have, because the Leafs have some offensive firepower as well, obviously. But no, the big difference between these two teams and what the Caps used to their advantage to great success is the size and the physicality of the Caps. The Caps absolutely blasted the Leafs with hits in this game, out-hitting them 31-9. And if you remember when the Caps beat the Leafs in the 2017 playoffs, it was much the same story. Bigger, more physically imposing Caps team beating up on, some would even say bullying, a smaller, wimpier Leafs team. And nothing has changed in the last few years, it appears. Canada's Sportsnet coverage, which for those who don't know is basically the Leafs network, they agreed on that assessment as well. And even they had to admit that their star defenseman Morgan Rielly was in way over his head in this game. He was running away scared from heavy hits by the Caps, and he was turning the puck over as a result. The Caps' big gun on the back end, however, and that was a completely different story. And he's the biggest gun in the NHL right now, by the way. Yes, not only is John Carlson leading all NHL defensemen in points, But after the game against the Leafs, in which he recorded a goal and 2 assists, and recorded a whopping 28 minutes and 5 seconds in ice time as well, he was also, after this game, leading the entire National Hockey League in points, with 14 of them ahead of forwards such as some guy named Connor McDavid. So yeah, there's that. So it didn't last, of course, as McDavid had 5 points later that night in Edmonton's game against the Philadelphia Flyers. And so McDavid now leads the league again with 17 points, but still. John Carlson probably won't win the Art Ross Trophy, as defensemen are basically never winning that, but he is an absolute beast. And he has a damn good shot at winning the Norris Trophy as the league's best defenseman. The Sportsnet broadcasters actually said during the middle of our game against the Leafs that the league should just give out the Norris Trophy right now to John Carlson because he's been that good. Anyways, the Caps beat the Leafs, and they are now sitting at 4-2-2 on the season. And for any Caps fans who may have been inclined recently to start freaking out about the fact that the Caps are not on an 8-game winning streak to start the season, I would like to refer you to something that we call strength of schedule. It's a metric that those in the analytics community use to determine which teams have had the easiest and the toughest schedules over a certain period of time, say for the month of October 2019. So when we look at the month of October 2019, this is what I would like to point out. The Caps have the second toughest schedule in the entire league in the month of October. So the fact that they have a winning record, 4-2-2, should be something that brings you peace, not anxiety. It should be something that makes you calm. It should be something that relaxes you, not freaks you out. So take a chill pill, Caps fans. It's all going to be all right. We're going to be fine. The underlying numbers say so, all of them. Until next time, babes, stay classy, and let's go Caps!